Okay, we'll give it just another minute here. Let a few others start joining in. And Robert, just want to confirm you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great.
Okay.
All right. Let me give it about another minute here as I see other folks are joining in. I'm going to go ahead and just kick off the introduction, and I'm sure we'll have more people joining over the next few minutes, but we do have a lot of info to cover today, so we do want to get going. Do appreciate everyone taking the time out of their busy day to hear what Plexis and Integrado have to say here about kind of where we're going with a PCM to accounting integration. Given that the world is moving to cloud-based, Microsoft is no different, and so they're moving to cloud-based with their historically on-prem installed systems such as Microsoft Dynamics Great Plains, or GP. And so Plexis has long been an integrated partner with that product since 1998, actually. And it's a sign of the times. Things are changing, and Microsoft is no longer going to offer really an on-prem installed solution. So they have a great replacement offering that Robert is going to talk about. And as a result, we've evaluated the integration that we currently have with DGPI, Dynamics Great Plains Integration Module, between PCM and Dynamics GP. And so so we've elected to partner with Integrado on the building of the new integration. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Real quick, over on the right side, I do want to speak first to the housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, so it'll be made available to you afterward. So feel free to take notes and so forth, but you will have access to the recorded version thereafter. We would ask that you put your questions in a chat. Normally with demonstrations and discussions, we like to have it interactive in real time. Because of the amount of information we have to present today, we do need to shelve the questions till towards the end. We'll try and get to as many as we can, and we'll also plan on following up with you individually to address further questions and have some one-on-one conversations about the information that was presented today and where we're going, and to see if this makes sense for your organization to get involved in earlier or at some point in the future. So over back to the left here on the agenda, I'm just going to speak briefly to the Plexis positioning regarding cloud technologies and cloud support. Introduce, Integrado. Some of you do know Integrado. They're a current supplier, vendor, service provider of yours and partner of Plexis. We will talk about what used to be the DGPI. It's now DBCI, the Dynamics Business Central integration. To replace DGPI. We'll speak more to that and some of the functions, common functions you're used to, and some of the more easy ways to do things with the new Business Central platform. So same task, but made a little easier, we believe. And then we want to speak to an introductory pilot program for, if you want to call them early adopters, but basically for organizations that want to take advantage of Microsoft's early adopter offering and incentives to move from Dynamics GP to Business Central, and how we want to parallel that. So just briefly on Plexis Cloud, for the last few years, Plexis has been offering a cloud-based offering as far as hosting and managed IT services in hosting Plexis software. That means the PCM software or any of our other two other core admin products. So more and more clients are asking us for that offering versus having their IT staff install locally, manage the environment, manage the upgrades, etc. Plexis can take that off your hands. And so we are now and have been having that offering. So that was step one, basically what we're called re-hosting the Plexis software, where we administer the software on your behalf and provide you secure access to it. Two is enabling real-time integration with other cloud-based applications. And so we have now released many iterations of our PCM AIS. AIS is Application Interface Services. They are database access web services that enable access to the different entities, components in the PCM database, members, providers, eligibility, claims, authorizations, etc. And those web services are used to trigger and support integrations with other external applications to enable conversations to take place between PCM and these other applications. They can be other accounting systems that enable the same type of data transfer to and fro with the accounting systems that you're used to with Dynamics GP, or as we have done in the past with QuickBooks as well. They can be the UMUR systems, enabling authorizations and referrals to be pushed over from an external source of truth system, system of record or source of truth system. Customer service front ends. We've had clients who have built customer service front ends on platforms such as Salesforce, who then push data into or retrieve data from PCM via the web services, AIS web services. And now we have a new offering with provider data management, enabling PDM or credentialing systems to interface with Plexis, with PCM, excuse me, enabling the retrieving of, querying of provider data, but also pushing to the additions and updates to provider data in real time through the web services. So the AIS web services enable us to support many integrations with many different external systems and recognize that PCM is part of a larger ecosystem, and that includes on the accounting side. And so we've done the same thing, leveraged AIS for the accounting integration. Next bullet, please. In relation to Integrado, many of you have worked at Integrado, or at least have worked with Robert Cheney for many years. Plexis, our relationship with Robert goes back for 15 years to CBiz and Connexia prior to Integrado. And so as Robert has evolved with his offering with Integrado, we stayed in close contact and have and it just made sense, the natural extension of our existing long-term relationship to work with them on the integration, the new integration between PCM and Microsoft's next generation accounting ERP system. Next bullet, please. So the Integrado cloud-based solution, connecting, the Microsoft Cloud, in this case, Biz Central, to PCM via the AIS web services. And so in today's day and age, it is not uncommon to license a cloud-based platform and then license extensions or integrations with other applications from that platform. And that is the approach we're taking here, that Integrado and Plexis are taking here, where a client can license from Microsoft Business Central and then ultimately go to the Microsoft store and license the integration between Business Central and PCM. So it's a little different on how we've always licensed the integration that's been directly from Plexis. It'll be a little different this time, which kind of flows and follows the natural evolution of software applications and integrations. Next bullet, please. So the results here is that we are enabling the integration between PCM and the Microsoft product as it evolves, in this case from Dynamics GP to Biz Central. And so we have the right technology, we have the right partnership in place, and so what we want to show is that we have the support for you to evolve your organization as the timing makes sense for you. But lastly, the result is a new solution that provides support for the same PCM to accounting workflows, but provides for an off-the-shelf integration with the new Microsoft's new flagship ERP and accounting system, Biz Central. And so we're going to speak further to that. And so at this point, I do want to transition over to Robert.
Thank you, Sean, for the introduction. Welcome everyone today. Look forward to sharing a lot of information So with this, I'll dig right in. For those of you, again, I've worked with Plexis for over 10 years now through various organizations. My background is an accountant, CPA, and worked through CBiz. And in 2021, we formed Integrado, mainly for the reason because Microsoft and technology did shift from what was an accounting system that stood on its own to more of an ecosystem within Microsoft. And we wanted to offer those opportunities and those skill sets to help clients with more of the Microsoft sort of cloud solutions that are offered. And I'll share more about what that looks like shortly. We are a direct cloud solutions provider. We have many clients that are on the DGBI system now, not just in the US, but around the world. And like I said, we wanted to share with you the opportunity to look at Business Central, talk a little bit more what it's about, and show you that it's even though it's something new, we're not trying to radically change your approach or make life harder. Hopefully it'll be a smooth operation to go into the new system, as well as an opportunity to see some of the new features that could make life easier. So with that, I'll share over to, again, the key topics that we want to try to address today. It wouldn't be right with talking about Business Central with at least understanding Microsoft, right, where the roadmap went and where it's going. Talk about, again, what were the core benefits and features of the current, DGPI integration. Talk about Business Central, right? If you're going to look to go to Business Central, we need to talk about migration, licensing, key components there. And ultimately, we'll share where we're at with the new integration and our goals of working with you in a pilot program and talk about what's coming next. So let's dig right in. So Microsoft Dynamics, right, is a product line that Microsoft, if you go to their website, sort of makes it as if it's one product, right? But really it's broken up of core products that they acquired over time, of which some of them we're calling legacy now because they are going away or have gone away. And what will be the replacements? So think of you had Great Plains, right? Or if you had Solomon or AX, or what used to be called Navision, these were 4 products that Microsoft acquired over 20 years ago and ultimately had a goal of shifting one of them to the cloud. Well, they made their choice back in about 2017 that they were going to take Navision and turn it into what's now called Business Central. The reason they went with Navision is because it has more worldwide adoption for localizations, multiple languages, and multi-currency. And again, I think you'll see that when they started shifting to Navision, a lot of their developers and resources came from the other applications. So they've made a lot of changes to what used to be Nav to make it even more GP friendly, or again, have the best features of that product that people liked and incorporated it. So that's what, like I said, is now called a SaaS offering, right? So when you think of the cloud, you think of a subscription, meaning sort of turnkey, and that you don't have to worry about upgrades. You don't have to worry about servers, right? You just worry about ultimately paying your next monthly subscription fee and let Microsoft handle the rest as far as backups and that. So when you think of Microsoft, though, and Dynamics and where it fits in what we'll say Microsoft's ecosystem, right? Microsoft has what we would say is really 3 main pillars, right? The core is what used to be Active Directory or infrastructure, right? For security and logging in and authentication. That's what Microsoft refers to really as Azure, right? That's everything more of infrastructure backend, server-based. Dynamics is more of those business solutions that are in the middle, including Business Central, Dynamics CE, their CRM product. And when you think of the front half of Microsoft 365, you think of the modern tools, Word, Excel, the front end systems that people use every day on their desktop. So in looking at how Dynamics fits in the middle, right, you're not just buying, an accounting system, right? You're really, you're adopting a solution that's in a secure environment with multi-factor and security and other improvements that they're able to add now that they're in the cloud, as well as connect to the front end tools. And we'll share some of that today. So when you look at Business Central, right, think of it as really the same modules that you would get in like Great Plains, so fixed asset, general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and it has other modules you may or may not be using. depending on your business, but it's a full accounting system, right? Like I said, the history of it's been around for years as what was called Navision, but it is now through a browser, right? When you think of GP, it was the first Windows program. And you know they loved Windows, right? So there was 100 windows that would open up. You'll see here with the interface, they're making it more modern, etc. So now talking and shifting about DGPI, right? What was that tool built for and what was the benefits? Again, going back to Plexis's goals of really focusing on its core processes, right? Claims management, premium billing, right? Focused around the healthcare industry. They did not have to want to worry about how to handle accounting rules for different countries and different processes that were really already driven in some key packages. That's why they went with the GP integration to begin with, right? So it also allowed for separation of accounting controls and processes, right? And best of breed of an accounting solution and a claims management healthcare system. And by doing that, right, it did let Microsoft continue to improve and evolve Dynamics to what it is today. And when you think of GP, you originally had to go through upgrades anyway, right? It went from version 10 to version 2015 to 2018, then went back to 18. So they've been changing it. Now the goal is it's really shifting to a new product called Business Central. When you think of what it does, for those of you maybe not using it, right? If you think about the process of adjudicating a claim, right? Basically approving it for payments, Great Plains and now Business Central is going to take the last leg to turn it into an invoice and then allow you to pay it through the system, right? So that means we're integrating with the vendor and chart of accounts, key main features to make sure that they synchronize and keep everything intact. When the bill's paid, it's going to write back to Plexis, so you have some information in there, and this thing's, the data stays in sync. So nothing's going to change with the new system as far as the functionality and the goals to give you everything you had before and do it now the same way. So again, talking about Business Central, what makes it a little bit unique is Microsoft had to rewrite it when they went into the cloud with the latest technologies, right? Windows wasn't the latest anymore when this came in. It's now web, right? What is your browser? How do we control it from anywhere, anytime, and get access to it? Also being able to allow it to upgrade, right? Without worrying about a whole upgrade process, right? So that you can see new releases coming, you can test them in a sandbox, and you can continue your daily operations. You don't have to worry about buying a new server, etc. You can also connect, if you're in the cloud now, with all of the other Power solutions, Power Apps, reporting solutions of Power BI. It's all connected again in the cloud platform when they built and they rebranded and rebuilt Navision to Business Central. So again, when you think about access in GP, right? If you have an office in a different location, you had to VPN into the system. Now you just have a web browser, right? You have it on your phone. There's an app for Android and for Apple. So you can get access to the system anywhere. And of course, through security. So part of Microsoft 365 is making sure you turn on multi-factor and whatever security rules to keep it secure. The other thing to consider with Business Central that you couldn't really do with GP is you can now sort of personalize the screens, right? You can sort columns, move things around. You can make it easier to do your job versus focused on the way Microsoft designed the screen. So you'll see a little bit later how you can personalize it for what you need, as well as Business Central and companies that have technology departments can customize the system. Where GP, where we're like, no, we don't want to customize and deal with the programming language. Here it's Visual Studio. So if you need to add fields or do something, it is a lot friendlier to do that in this environment than it was under GP. And we took advantage of that in building the new integration. Besides what Microsoft offers, some of you who have GP may have used third-party tools like E1 Smart Connect or McCorma for check printing, right? They took those ISV or independent software vendors and they now added them as applications in a store, sort of like the QuickBooks App Store. Now Microsoft has their own. So it makes adding extensions for any third-party product a lot easier. right? Our new integration is going to be one of those extensions. So it means when Microsoft ultimately is upgrading their product for the next version, we need to maintain and be aligned with those so you can easily upgrade in the cloud knowing that any integration or third-party product will continue to work. These are some of our other partners. Again, a lot of the third-party products that were around with Great Plains have also adopted and gone to Business Central. So if you have tools like Smart Connect for integrations and other stuff, those still can become valuable and can be used in the new environment. When you think again about a cloud solution or subscription, it's turnkey, right? So this is almost a screen in the back end of your server, right? Where Microsoft, through an admin panel, allows you to create sandbox environments or copies of servers, gives you updates to what's happening, handles all backups, and pretty much controls everything for you. I do want to mention, we know there's certain industries and certain companies that don't have full-time internet access. Microsoft does give you dual licenses that if you need to and want to install Business Central on servers in a more remote environment, that is possible as well. With the same licensing, you can get on-premise keys if for some reason the cloud is not perfect for you from a wireless or, again, sort of internet-based approach to get back to Microsoft's servers around the world. I think it would be important to talk about pricing, right? So those of you that work with Integrado, we've already started you when Microsoft started shifting to talk about promotions that were available where you can actually have Business Central now while you have GP and paying for maintenance, so you can get a feel for how it works. So those of you, again, who have that dual licensing and that promotion to get Business Central, you could be easy candidates for our pilot program because you already have the product. For those of you that may have a Great Plains or have QuickBooks or something, Business Central is not expensive. It's pretty much most people go with the Essentials license at $70 per month, just like you would pay for Office 365. It's just a subscription price. Or what a team member is a read-only or limited user rights, but that's all you pay. So if you have 2 users that need to create claims and do premium billing, you're only paying 2 times $70, $140 a month, all in. That's it. Doesn't base it on the number of companies, doesn't base it on anything else. It's really affordable and it's not an expensive program. I mentioned dual licensing for those of you, if you did say, okay, I'm going to pay $70 a month for 2 users, but I need to install it on our servers. That's not a problem. You can download the licenses and put it in more of a traditional or privately hosted environment if that works for you. Microsoft is supporting Great Plains from their modern life cycle, but working with Great Plains for 20 years and still having clients like you on it, we are noticing that they've shifted resources. I believe there's only 1 or 2 people left in support, and not that we have to call Microsoft much for issues, but if there were, they really are phasing it down. So we felt we don't want to wait a much longer to offer clients the opportunity to look at and shift the technology before it really gets to the end of Microsoft's life cycle, right? We're seeing more changes in security and other factors that are causing the environment that GP is installed on to potentially have to be upgraded more than just the ability to cut checks. So something to consider, and we could talk to you about as far as your time to migrate. And again, for those of you that might have GP and didn't hear about it, there is some promotions that give you 40% off of the price of the software. So 40% off of $70 per user. And we'll still give you the benefits of having maintenance on GP, but also getting Business Central licenses as well. So those of you interested in learning more about that, happy to share that with you. Migrating data, right? Microsoft has also made this process a lot easier. If for those of you who we send the slideshow, this is a hyperlink to Microsoft's website. They actually have a migration utility. Don't get scared about the screen here on the right with Azure data pipelines, etc. It's really a wizard-driven tool that lets you take your GP data, have it synchronized to the cloud, and then look at it and see, and get used to the program, look at the changes. So in most of what we see, Plexis is clients that are using DGPI for claims, we think that tool will be a great opportunity, right? There are some times where you want to start over and you want to start with the new chart of accounts or start over where using this tool may not make sense, but we think for most of the companies using the integration, this tool will work very well, makes it a lot quicker and easier to bring the data over. If you have QuickBooks and want to consider Business Central, they also have a wizard-driven migrate data process as well. And for those of you who might be on a different ERP system wanting to consider Business Central, they have integration tools built into the program to bring in right from Excel, et cetera, that make it easier. So migration would also, like I said, be something to consider if you're looking to go to Business Central. And like I said, I think Microsoft has some good options there to make that easier. So let's again get into the point of demoing the product, right? So we want to show you some of the tools. I first want to go over just an overview of Business Central, right? What makes it a little different from GP. And then ultimately make sure that we're showing you we're still doing the basic steps you're doing now, right? If you adjudicate a claim in Plexis and you want to make sure you can pay that to send it to the provider, you can still do that quickly, right? But we'll show you how Business Central might do it a little bit easier, a little different, right? With still the same goals. So we're going to review again navigation. We also again have not finished this tool, right? The reason why we haven't finished it is we want your involvement. We want to hear from you of how you use the tool and how you might want some different data or something else, right? We have the options now and figured before we finalize something, let's work with a couple companies and get their input on what they would like to see or what's different. In working with Judy and others from Plexis, I've learned over the years areas where I thought the current integration we could have done better. And that's where we've tried to incorporate some of those. But working with you, I think we can even make a better job of the finished one. So let's switch over now to Business Central. So you should see on my screen now, hopefully everyone can see Business Central. Sean or someone might want to confirm.
Yes.
Yep, we're
Perfect.
good.
Okay, so Business Central, as I said, is a browser-based program. So as long as you have Microsoft Chrome or Google Chrome or Edge or any of the latest browsers, you can log into it just like you log into any of your other Microsoft 365 products when you're installing it as a subscription. So you just go to Business Central, you're on the homepage. So think of this as GP's homepage, right? When you look at the way they designed it, they've definitely taken advantage of what they call roles. So you as a user would be set up with your own role, and the role is going to make it easier to only have at your fingertips what's important to you. So if you're dealing in payables or sales or premium, you could get roles that just put on the screen what you need to focus on to do your job and try to avoid any clutter, right, that you would normally see in other programs. We have all these menu options like in GP, but you never go there, right? Here it's just focus on what's important. And you'll see here what I'm going to focus on today. I just pinned it as items that I want to focus on. So if I went to finance and said I want to, go to fixed assets, and I go there every day, I could just pin this window, right? So when I pin it, go back to my home page, fixed assets will ultimately show up as a new pinned window. So again, you can make navigation nice and easy. The other thing to consider is because I'm in a browser, I can be in multiple pages in multiple companies and doing multiple things at the same time. So if I want to duplicate this tab, have another one in chart of accounts, go to another company or another window, I could be in 3 windows at the same time, or I could move this to a different monitor, right? So talk about multitasking. You can really be doing 3 or 4 different things at once and actually do that on different windows versus Microsoft GP. You were 1 window at a time, right? You had a lot open, but you could only do really 1 thing at a time for some cases. So go back to the main screen. Again, the role page designs it for what you want. You also have down below where you have what are called cues that give you insight into key information. So notice we added one for PCM, right? Saying here's the open invoices and AP transactions. And here's the screen of all the adjudication batches that we'll get to shortly that we need to process. You also have down below, again, depending on your role, I could have open outstanding invoices that I have to pay. So with all these, you just click and it actually takes you to the screen that gives you all the information. So here's your list of open invoices. Any of these that are in red are just changing color because they're older and date sensitive. So you'll see here, notice this is a list view, right? Think of Great Plains when you think of Smart List, right? They've really incorporated Smart List into the navigation of the program so you can click on and see more information. I'll show you that in a moment. Also going down below, you can see that we can tie into Power BI and other reporting tools, right, to give you sort of the information you need at your fingertips when you're using the system. One other window I wanted to go into, or an area to show you how the system is pretty consistent, right, is like if I go to customers, when you think of GP, you could go to a smart list of open customers or different customers, or you could go to a customer inquiry window or go here, right? A lot of windows. Here you start with a smart list, right? Or a list view that gives you key information about your customers, right? Including balances. And if you click on a particular customer, you actually see all of their information on the right. So what is their payments? What is their open balance, right? And you can click on any of these hyperlinks and answer any question you have. So again, you're not having to open 10 windows to get an answer to a question. You have a lot of information at your fingertips. If you also want to search for a vendor, a customer, an account, you no longer have to worry about your numbering scheme, including alphanumeric characters, to make it easier. Because if I search for the customer that has, let's see, Usman in their contact, it will find it. So it has more of global Google type searching, not to just search for the item number, but other information in the record to pull it. So it makes searching and other stuff easier. Again, just navigation things to talk about. When we open up a customer, again, instead of having multiple windows and drop boxes to go in, the customer is basically broken up in sections that you can shrink or expand. So this is the main area where you have a customer number. Down below, you have the address, right? Anything to do with invoicing, right? Payments, etc. Right? For those doing premium billing and would be using customers, for those that are insured, this is where we would store all that information. And basically, you notice there's buttons to send right to PCM, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. So again, hopefully you see navigation. While it may be different for you when you're used to GP, right? You still have access once you get used to Business Central to get the data you need pretty quickly in the system. One other quick thing to mention before we start going into some of the integration components we built is I mentioned that Microsoft is tying this program into other areas. So if you have, for example, a claims department or premium billing that's used to using a team, right? So if you guys use Microsoft Teams, you can actually embed Business Central windows in Teams, right? Of course, through security that can provide information to even just Microsoft regular users. They don't have to have a Business Central license to get a list of customers, vendors, whatever it might be. Again, of course, this is wrapped in security to make sure nothing that shouldn't be seen. But ultimately, again, it's exposing Business Central information, right, throughout the Microsoft modern tools, including Microsoft Teams. If I'm in Excel and want to dump the customer list, right, and update information, I can real-time edit and refresh right from Excel. So using Excel for data migration, working with the tool is much more integrated. Of course, we have Power BI to provide information, and even Outlook. Say most people work in Outlook every day, right? They get information from providers, etc. Here I'm in an email, and right within this email, if it recognizes this contact as a customer or a vendor, right, I can actually get insights, open up and actually interact with Business Central, respond to the person, answer questions without leaving Outlook. And of course, this works in the desktop version as well. So again, being able for Microsoft to tie Business Central to the other stack makes it easier to do your daily job, right, and to work. Okay, getting back to the integration. right? Again, my goal was to say that we've made the integration with the same benefits it had before, but just a little bit easier. So let's talk about how the product is set up, right? And how someone interacts with it. So to do that, let me make a point of opening up just to show you on Word, right? A screenshot of what the login information looks in GP. I didn't want to fight with PowerPoint back and forth, so I thought it'd be easier to put on Word, right? For when you're setting up the PCM integration, you go to a couple windows, and ultimately every time you log in, right, you have to say activate PCM. Or like, if you're using PCM all the time, why do I have to ask the question, right? So we made that part a little bit easier. So we have a PCM setup window. So this is the main information. If you have rights and security, this is where we're linking with web services and logging directly into the environment. Those of you concerned with security over the web, we'll definitely talk to you separately, because authenticating and making sure the web services and the data is secure is of high importance. So we can talk to you about the options you have there. But nice, easy PCM setup window. And then we said, you know what, let's make it easier to say which users actually are integrated. So you can come right over here and pick each user and what company they're integrated with just a checkbox. So now when they log into Business Central, if they're integrated, they're going to get this screen here that says, hey, I'm integrated and here's what's going on. If you need to ultimately unintegrate, right, there are scenarios where a boo-boo happened and you got to fix some data or do something. We also have the option under user preferences to actually go in and turn it off if you need to for those one-off integrations. But if you're working in it every day, why not keep it on, right? So one of the things that we changed. I mentioned tighter integration. So, the queues that are in Business Central that talk about what's open, same thing is here. So as we expand the program to include the premium billing and et cetera, we will focus more on adding other checkboxes for users to have visibility into any invoices that were created. I'll dig a little bit more into this, but again, this makes it easier to get right to your work. Chart of account integration. This is something that just going to Business Central is a little different, right? When you think of GP, going to account integration, I'm just going to open up this window and go to the second screen, right? You think of the account window, and some of you may have a simple chart of account that's only 4 or 5 digits. Others of you might have 6 or 7 segments, right? Because you're dividing your chart of account by location, by department, by whatever. And that's great, but for those of you who know, you ended up with a lot of chart of accounts and it was a little hard to work with all those multi-segments. You also in Plexis had to say that the account must begin with PCM, right? Rules that we wrote with the integration because we didn't have a lot of choice of customizing or extending Great Plains, right, is easier. So when we look at accounts in Business Central, right, I'm just going to go to my chart of accounts. Here's a list of my chart of accounts. Notice, unlike a smart list, I'm also getting real-time balances. So if I say, show me anything that has PCM accounts, here we go. I can create these views and save them. Think of your smart list that you're saving right now in GP are basically your list views saved the way you want. So in this case, if I want to go edit an account and say that I'm integrating with Plexis, all I say is a little checkbox, integrate with PCM, send it to PCM, and it's now going to show up inside of Plexis, right? Ready to be used as part of the setups. And it even tells you which ID it is for troubleshooting and stuff later that we link to this particular account. So again, I don't have to have specific rules that it should begin with PCM. If I change the name doesn't matter. I'm integrating with PCM because I have a checkbox, and you'll see that across the board. Dimensions are another big thing in Business Central. Won't spend a lot of time on it now, but if you do need to understand more about your business, right, by the type of claim, the type of, maybe you want to break up, if again you're on an island and you have different islands, you want to break up by geographic or other factors, dimensions let you do that. So ultimately, when we talk to each client about how they would use dimensions, right, we actually have a mapping table that lets you consider the way you would have dealt with multi-segments and how they will be linked to dimensions. Again, the goal is to make sure that if I wanted to track P&Ls or data in my financials based upon location, department, etc., Business Central has a way to do it with dimensions that does not cause you to have a huge chart of accounts. It's just tagging it like you would other data in a more modern system. Again, for those of you interested in that, definitely separate conversation to discuss. Now let's talk about vendors, right? Thinking about the claim side. That's what we focused on first, because we knew that whatever we did on the premium billing for the most part would mirror what we did on the vendor side. So when you think of the current integration, right? You go to a vendor card, the vendor class was critical in the system, and that it would tell it whether or not, if it started with PCM, it would integrate over, because again, we didn't have a checkbox. And you could push vendors from GP to Plexis. And you could also, when you were importing new claims, right, you could update the Plexis. You could update the vendor when new claims came in, right? And those were setup options depending on controls in your environment that you can control, deal with. Same thing is true in Business Central. And Richard's going to help me in a moment actually show you a real-time integration, just to show you that it's not smoke and mirrors, that some of this stuff is actually working. But going into the PCM setup, we do have something called auto create new vendors, and we can turn on what's called a scheduler in the back end. So if you said every time a new vendor is created or a new customer, right, inside of PCM, we could have it come over automatically in the background, right? That's huge for some clients we worked with that actually needed to have the vendor or customer created from PCM, right, and then moved into Great Plains earlier than what the system was doing. So we have more options of when and how it integrates, and of course you can control it depending on your rules. So with that, Richard, if I'm going to transfer over to you and change you as presenter so you could show PCM and Business Central and actually showing to create a new vendor real quick.
Thank you, Robert. So as you can see, can you see my screen, Robert?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So as you can see, this is the vendor listing in Business Central, and you can create a new vendor in Business Central, and just like with I believe the vendor class, you can specify the vendor class or what we call a vendor template to apply against a new vendor. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and choose Plexis vendor, which has its own set of settings that you can specify. Okay, so go ahead and create a new one. Okay, I'm going to say, okay, I want to use Plexis vendor, and it's going to create a blank vendor entry card for you. Okay, and I'm just going to put in, let's see, test vendor, and I'm going to call this a put in a addressed. Make it based out of Miami. And Business Central is smart enough to understand that Miami is most likely in the state of Florida, and automatically puts in the zip code, which has already been set up in the background. Okay. So once the vendor information has already been inputted, then you can go ahead and turn this on, and by default it is turned on because of the integrate with PCM is set up for or turned on for this company. So the user has an option to go ahead and send this information over to PCM. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And when it does, I can switch over to the PCM system and click on vendors. And here is now the new vendor in PCM, as you can see.
Perfect. So Richard, how do we know it wasn't there before? Maybe you do it one more time to show that.
Sure, of course.
Was it already in there?
No problem. Let me just go ahead and create a new one. In fact, instead of just the generic V800, I'm just going to say my test vendor. Okay. Yep, I want to use that. Come on. Okay. Now I'm just going to name it. Okay. And put in a different address. And again, this is going to be in, actually this time it's going to be in Atlanta, Georgia. Okay. And so I'm going to go ahead and send this to PCM.
Again, this is happening through web services, right? Business Central is in Microsoft's cloud, and the Plexis environment is being hosted on Azure, right? In Plexis, sort of, they're hosting it, and we're pushing and pulling it directly through the web.
And as you can see, it returned the PCM ID. And so when we go into Plexis or PCM, let's refresh that screen, and you will see here's my test vendor. And here's the address and the vendor information.
Perfect, Richard. Thank you for that. Let me switch back into my screen to share a little bit more about that. As Richard said, again, you can open up a vendor card and you can see the vendors. We also have, again, the ability with these lists to filter vendors. And if for some reason you added 3 or 4 vendors and wanted to multi-select, and you'll see this anywhere, if I hold my control key down, I can select more than one, right? Or select all of them. And we will have the opportunity to actually send the PCM more than one vendor, more than one customer, more than one chart of account. So you will have the ability to multi-select to do more than one or just one at a time.
And Robert, I'm sorry, Robert, that is under home menu option.
Right, so send a PCM. So,
yes.
Yeah. Other thing to consider is we haven't run across an example because we put an address in, but it will have, and it does have all the rules to say, hey, you need to make sure if it's 1099, it says 1099. So anything that was set up in the current PCM integration book, right, about making sure certain data is required will be also brought over as well. But again, notice how quick it was. It brought it right back, even going through the web. And again, just a checkbox. We don't have to worry about the class contains or anything like that, right? And again, we don't have to go to additional in the drop-down menu for that. So let's talk a little bit more about actually the claim adjudication process, right? So for those of you familiar, you start inside of Plexix Claim Manager. You create an adjudication run, right, or a captation run, and you basically put all of those claims that are being approved into a particular batch. And then ultimately you close the batch so that it's available in GP so that you can import all of those claims to pay them, right? Some people don't even realize they're first creating accounts payable invoices and then paying them, right? It's just 2 steps that they follow through. Same thing will happen in here, right? We're still going to have the same statuses. But when you think of GP, right, you had to find that payables batch entry window, you had to click additional, and you had to pop up and find this window here, right? In our case, we'll have a shortcut right on the home page that says, here's the window, right? I already took you there once, but we'll go back to it. The other thing is a lot of these setups with the default checkbook, the system date, and other stuff are baked into the setups that you'll find. And like I said, a lot of this stuff is just as simple or easier in Business Central. And then we'll show you what the payable entry looks like. What I wanted to note here is we have some clients that always had challenges with a payables entry screen inside a GP because there wasn't a lot of fields to work with, right? So if your environment wanted more breakdown of detail or more information, we were really limited to what GP allowed. You will see in Business Central, the payables and receivables invoice window has a lot more data and we're more flexible of what we can bring in. So with that, let me get out of here and go back into the home page and talk a little bit about bringing over batches. And I promise we're getting close with time, so we should be good here. So if we go back to the home page and we're saying, okay, the claims manager just created a batch and adjudication. Maybe they walked over a paper, they email me, here's the totals, right? You need to bring it in. We're gonna come over here and we're gonna look at any open batch. Now, you remember in the current GP window, you could have it to look at historical, right? Or the ones that are just open. The same thing will be here by filtering the list. So if we say, hey, anything where open invoices, right? Or the batch status will change, right? We could say where open invoices is equal to 0, right? Filter the list. And you can save this as anything where there's no open invoices or where the batch is this. So just like I showed you in the other windows, you can filter this list to see all of the information, a piece of the information, whatever you like. And as well as I didn't show you yet, right? We can personalize the windows to move fields around. So maybe I want open invoices over here, right? Maybe I want the sort or the filter to be different, right? This is stuff that, of course, in the original version of GP, you didn't have all these filters and all these sort of options. So those of you that start playing with Business Central, you'll realize some nice ways to move it, to make data entry, and to give visibility what's important to you, right? At your fingertip. I save it, and it's done. So let's just say this batch right here was a batch that was brought over, and Judy was helping us in the background, right? So if I click on this and I want to bring this in and create the invoices, all I need to do is go to Actions, tell it to get the AP run, right, which would be all of the claims. It's going to ask me to enter a date. By default, if I hit save, it's going to be today's date. But again, you know that you can go back and date these invoices for the end of last month, maybe just yesterday or whatever. You can do that, just like the current system. You hit OK, it's going to go out. It's going to get the invoices. It's going to bring them in. So it was already had the vendor, so none was created, but one vendor invoice was created. So when I hit OK, and let me get rid of this filter because I want to see all of them, right? It disappeared. Here's my open invoice. So when I click on it, it'll actually take me right to it. So here's the open invoice. If I want to look at it, here's what it looks like. Okay, so here's the basic information on the top you guys are used to. For those in GP, your voucher number, right? Here it's the vendor invoice number. And where you only had one field to put information, we have a whole section that we're adding information to let you know which claim ID it was, which adjudication run, which line number on the claim it was, right? So we can add more information here and look forward to talking to you about what can be added in GP to make life easier for finding data and going back and forth between Plexis. And of course, here's the GL account that comes over with the dollar amounts and everything else. So this is nothing more than the AP invoice that was inside of Great Plains, right? It just has more information for you. You can even add attachments and other information, right? So if anything, you can have the same data you had before. You can have the same process now very easily. These also have, if again, you had a request approval because maybe in your environment, any claims over X dollar amount still needed another approval in accounting, there's request approvals and other things you can do inside of here. Obviously, the invoice needs to be posted just like the GP batch, right? So you can come over and when you're done importing all your claims, you can highlight them all and just tell it to post. Right? And then it's going to say post the invoice or invoices, just like posting the GP batch. It will post all of them, right? And then they'll be available to pay. Now, Business Central has the same payment screen. Whoops, no tax group on that one. So still got some setups to do here. If I go back to the main page here, right, and go back to my claim summaries, you'll notice these have posted invoices, so you can go right here and see them. These invoices, if I try to open them, they're locked down, right? You can't edit them because they're posted. What is nice though is I can quickly correct one. So unlike GP where you had to redo and This program, it's a lot easier to fix a mistake or a gotcha and correct and do stuff. And we'll be working with those in the pilot program to again, look at best practices to write that back to Plexis.
And hey, Robert, we're down to a few minutes left here, so I just wanted to be the time cop and chime in.
Perfect. So just one more thing to talk about in here is, again, if I'm going to pay these bills, right, just like GP, you can go through a payment batch, but also here I can come over and look at all my outstanding invoices, right? These were the 2 that came over. I can highlight all of them or what I want, and I can create a payment. It's automatically going to fill in the right information. It could be ACH, it could be with a third-party payer. I hit OK, and it's going to create my payment batch to print checks and do everything I do now. And those that needed MICR or other stuff, Business Central supports MICR out of the box. You don't need any third parties. So hopefully showed you a good example of where we're at. We definitely want your feedback and involvement in this integration to make it even more of a tool that everyone would want to use. So with that, let me put back the slideshow and sort of wrap up a couple slides with Sean about, again, where we're going. So knowing we want some people in a pilot program, right, to actually finish the design and pilot it and test it, we are looking at having some companies look to register for this program and have those selected by the end of November. We'll work with you in considering what needs to happen with Business Central and getting that set up, and ultimately start the program in the first quarter of 24. We understand with healthcare, fourth quarter is sort of tight for those of you. So it's more about getting things aligned to start it in the first quarter of 24. We've done a lot of work in the background, so we don't think going past the quarter would be longer to actually finish the product to where we think we're good to go live with it. With that, I want to talk a little bit about the subscription, right? So again, this is a subscription. It will be maintained and updated by Integrado. So the subscription would include any updates that arise because of Microsoft updating to a newer version of Business Central, just like what happens now. It will connect to the PCM web services that will be maintained by Plexis. Basically, all of the services that were available for the accounting are what we're using for the new integration. We can also work with you if you wanted to extend this, right, to do something a little different for your company. As I mentioned, Visual Studio and some of its options, we have a lot more ability to make it maybe to address your particular need versus workarounds that we had to do for Great Plains. It is supported in various countries and various languages and with localizations for VAT and other taxes. Our initial deployment is considering the North American sort of version, which in GP you only had one version, North American. So those of you that may live in other countries and have different rules, definitely want to talk to you about potentially what would be important to you. And then while pricing is not finalized, right, we're considering pricing something that's affordable to what you had now, and especially for those that are existing clients of Plexis and Integrado, as well as those participating in the pilot program. We'll be looking at offering promotions and other to make it affordable. Again, the pilot program, the benefits to you is to provide feedback about the process and features, right, to get your input. We will look to work with you to migrate your GP data to Business Central. So you're going to get the benefit of us working with you with, to get an environment in the sandbox. As part of this process, you're going to receive training on Business Central, right? For those of you in the pilot program, it's sort of a full implementation, at least in the sandbox environment, and you'll be the first to go live with it. We will ask that you have supported versions of GP and SQL, and we'll talk to you about that to make sure you're on the right version that can upgrade easy. And we want your help and resources to help set up testing and feedback, right? So there is some ask of you to have weekly meetings, etc., to hopefully help in the feedback. And if you don't already have the subscription, right, we can talk to you about options you have with potentially promotions or other stuff to get Business Central at an affordable price. And the registration code is here if you have your phone and want to click on it. That will work to take you to a form to fill out or talk to us, right? Especially those of you that might be in QuickBooks or not in GP and interested in how Business Central can help you. We want to hear from you, right? We know QuickBooks is also going to the cloud with their program, and things are a little different there. So you might be interested in learning about how this program will help you. With that, Sean, you have some final thoughts or feedback?
No, I think you put a bow around it the way we wanted you here, and I appreciate everything that you've gone through, you and Richard. Hopefully this communicated to the attendees what we're, the path we're on, and that we're paying attention to, the evolution of the software, and working to enable greater efficiencies and to allow folks to stay with their, current solution provider, in this case Microsoft, or evolve to Microsoft there on QuickBooks or something else, and that we've got a great solution, to work with here. So I appreciate everyone's time, Robert and company from Integrado. Thank you very, very much. And I think we're going to wrap it up now.
Thank you, everyone. We hope to hear from you soon.
All right. Thanks all.